There's a big stereotype around darts that all players from pub leagues to the pros are overweight. And while that's obviously not true, with there now being a lot more players at the top of the game having an emphasis on their health, there certainly are a lot of players that are still overweight. And that's obviously a great thing for the future of the game. But for a while now, there's been a theory that losing weight can actually make pros worse. And that's what we're going to take a look at in today's video. Recently, Peter Wright has lost 3 stone in a matter of months and he's looking really good. But Wright, who's been struggling for form over recent years, has seemingly struggled even more since the weight loss, and he's admitted that it's affected his throw with a loss of power. He said, "Yes, definitely, especially at Milton Keynes. Oh my god, it was like the dart would just get to a certain distance and then drop or just kick to the right and not quite reach my target. So that's something I've been experimenting with." Now there is precedent of weight loss having a negative effect on other players, but also there are some players which has clearly helped. The most famous case of it having a negative effect comes from back in 2003, but for context we need to start in 1990 when Phil Taylor won his first world title over in the now defunct BDO. He won another BDO title in 1992, but his real dominant run began when the PDC version began. After losing to Dennis Priestley in the final of the first edition in 1994, Phil incredibly won the next 8 editions in a row between 95 and 2002. Phil's dominance during this time can be seen in the fact that during that run, he won 40 consecutive games in the event and he didn't even drop a single set in over half of them. However, despite that great run of success, it was clear that the tour and lifestyle had an effect on his health as he gained loads of weight and was looking bigger almost every year. But come the 2003 edition, it was clear that Taylor had shed a lot of weight, revealed to be around 3 stone, and he had a new look completely, complete with a new hairstyle and accessories. On it, The Guardian wrote, "Phil the Power Taylor, the finest thrower ever to approach a nocky, is sporting a striking new look. So, out goes the immense beer gut, out goes the pencil moustache, in comes bleached blonde hair and a chunky earring. The result is extraordinary. Sure, he looks like a man having a midlife crisis, but at the same time, he also looks the best part of 15 years younger. But what remains to be seen is the effect the new image will have on his throwing." Taylor himself admitted in a post-match interview on Saturday night that he has to make some adjustments to his stance. Phil's level was still obviously very high, but he was just slightly off the insane levels from the previous years. However, his B game was still enough for him to get comfortable wins over Dennis Smith in the quarters and Alan Warren a little in the semis to reach his 10th final in a row. His opponent in the final was John Parr, who he'd beaten all 5 times they played on TV, but after clawing back a 4-1 deficit to 5-4, the Power was beaten in a deciding set. At the time, this brilliant game was called one of, if not the best games ever, and it saw Parr become the first non-British PDC world champion. A lot of the talk after the event, however, was about if Taylor's weight loss had a negative effect on his level, and commentator Sid Waddell certainly thought so, noting that Taylor was suffering a power cut. He said, "He's lost muscle weight below the navel, and that's affected his balance. He now often throws a quarter to half an inch below the 60 bed." When asked about the effects a few months later, Phil said, No, not at all. I actually felt better myself. I just went through a little bit of depression, and the weight came off. Yeah, the pressure, I think. It just hit me. Over the last 14 years of being a pro, everything just built up, and just I had a funny 6 months. Like a headache for half a year, but I'm alright now. I didn't do anything silly, and I got over it. My weight didn't have anything at all to do with my performance though. But one player that did blame their drop in form on some weight loss is the man known as the machine gun, Jermaine Wattimena. The Dutchman won his PDC Tour card back in 2015, finishing 3rd on the Q School Order of Merit ahead of future major winners and Premier League players Nathan Aspinall and Chris Dobey. After 3 decent but unspectacular years on tour, where he slowly climbed the rankings, at the start of 2018 he picked up his first win on the Ali Pali stage, beating Joe Cullen in a tiebreak, and in 2019 he reached his first major quarterfinal at the World Grand Prix after an emotional win over Peter Wright. That result saw him reach a career-high ranking of 17, just outside of the golden top 16 in the world. He then fell down the ranking slightly, but was still playing well, and in November 2020, he reached a Players' Championship final, in which he narrowly lost to Michael Smith. However, for his whole time on tour to that point, he'd been very overweight, and it looked to be getting worse every year. This photo was taken at the end of 2020, but just after that at Christmas time, when he was standing on the scales, he said that he was terrified and that it was time for things to change. And he did exactly that, losing 33 kilos in the first half of 2021, which was very impressive and left him looking very different. Jermaine said that he accomplished it using a Weight Watchers program as well as some interval training. However, like Taylor, he did suffer a dip in form around that time, but said, "I have to be patient, it doesn't just go away, it's in you anyway. You really benefit from a good fitness for darts. You can last longer and you also become stronger mentally. It may not work immediately in half, a year or in 1 or 2 years, but in the future it can certainly work in my favour." But his results clearly then took a big dip, as after being ranked 26th at the end of 2020, he fell to 36th in 2021, 39th in 2022 and 51st after 2023. Last year though, he had a return to form and was arguably even better than ever, reaching his first major televised final at the European Championship after a sudden death leg win over his compatriot Danny Noppert. He lost heavily to Richie Edhouse in the final, but was clearly just happy to be there and with his general progression. But what do you notice? Yes, it's clear he put all the weight back on and maybe even more. And he looked similar just a few months ago when he finally won his first PDC title in his 7th final, and he was delighted after. On his weight loss and regain experience, he recently said, "It lasted about 2.5 years. I'm just grateful I had enough ranking buffer to avoid losing my tour card. That was my bit of luck. At the time, I'd lost a lot of weight and quite rapidly too, but on the Pro Tour, you start noticing irregularities in your body, especially with all the travel, and then the weight creeps back. Once I started putting the weight back on, suddenly the darts were flying straight again." He's now clearly in a strange situation as he's playing brilliantly and has climbed to 25th in the world again, but it's come at a cost to his health. Another case of weight loss seemingly having a bad effect on a player's form can be seen with John Henderson, who after lurking around the top 40 in the world, had his breakthrough in 2015, reaching the final of a Euro Tour where he was only beaten by a prime MVG in a sudden death leg, and the quarter-finals of the European Championships with a dominant win over Roby John Rodriguez. That saw him enter the world's top 32, and he continued to climb over the following few years, most notably in 2017 when he had a great run at the World Grand Prix, which began with a shock win over MVG, who had reached the final for the previous 3 years, before beating both Alan Norris and Raymond van Barneveld to reach his first major semi-final when he was beaten by the eventual champ Daryl Gurney. That helped him to finish the year ranked 29th, which improved to 23rd in 2018. He also still was in the top 32 come the end of 2019. But like the other players we've looked at so far, John was very unhealthy during this time despite his success. But he eventually decided to do something about it, and during 2020 he impressively lost 4 stone. But that season saw him fall to 41st in the world, and after 2021 it got worse as he fell to 63rd. But he did have the best moment of his PDC career, winning the unranked Pairs World Cup for Scotland alongside Peter Wright. He was really struggling with his form though, and that was down to his unorthodox throw, which sees him rock forwards and back before releasing each dart. On that he said, "Everyone was talking about the weight loss, whether it has changed my throw, but it hasn't in my mind. But I've been looking back on the Marco Cantelli and Johnny Clayton games at Ali Pali. The rock as I throw the dart doesn't seem to be rocking as it normally would. So that's something I've got to work on, and I'm putting in the hours right now." The 2022 World Championships was then the first he didn't manage to qualify for since 2013, and at the end of that year he lost his tour card. He since failed to win it back, but had a great 2024 season on the now defunct senior circuit, winning 3 televised titles, including the Seniors World Championship. He seemed to stay at a similar weight to, and has said, "I'm close to reversing my diabetes. My blood sugars are at a good level now, but for the next 12 months, they want to keep me on the medication. I've just got to continue my exercise and diet. The weight is now coming off slower, but in total, I've lost 4 stone since the pandemic." But while all the cases I've mentioned so far all point towards weight loss being bad for darts, there is one very notable case that makes it seem otherwise, and that is the one of the current world number 1 cool hand Luke Humphries. Luke had some success in the early stage of his career, particularly on the youth circuit, winning the Development Tour in 2017 and 2018 and the World Youth Championship in 2019. Around that time, He'd also made his breakthrough in senior TV events, first in the 2019 World Championship when he beat defending champion Rob Cross to reach the quarters, and then a year later at the same event when he beat Kim Huybrechts to reach the same stage again. But not everything was going right for Humphries, most notably mentally, as he was suffering badly with anxiety for almost 2 years and had a panic attack during a Eurotour game against James Wade in Germany. After that, he took a short break from the game, during which he underwent cognitive behavioural therapy and hypnotherapy to help him, but he also began to focus on his health, eating better. This was a great decision, as Luke was clearly also struggling physically with his weight. His focus on his physical health was then actually boosted by the COVID pandemic, as it gave him a lot of time away from the darts tour to exercise, and in 2021 he lost 2 stone at the start of the year, taking his longer term weight loss to 4 stone. And guess what? In his very first ranking major of that year, the UK Open, Luke managed to reach his first major final, and he's since kept the weight off and gone from strength to strength, winning his first senior title at Players Championship 1 in 2022, as well as his first stage titles with 4 Eurotours, seeing him top the European rankings. 2023 saw him win his first 3 major titles towards the end of the year, with his first coming with a 138 checkout at the World Grand Prix. 2024 then started with him becoming world champ and world number 1, a spot he's held on to ever since, picking up 4 further singles majors, including this year's Premier League, to complete the Triple Crown. And what does he put all that success down to? Well, it's his stunning weight loss. He told Oki 180, "I honestly do put my success down to the way I've lost weight. I was very fatigued when I was overweight. Darts is a non-physical sport, but you're on your feet all the time. When you carry any excess weight, it just tires you out. I feel like when I lost the weight, I was much more energetic, exercising more, and could cope with the longer days much better. It was the missing ingredient in my game. I was always very good, but not good enough for long enough." A similar trend can also be seen with the uptick in form of Ross Smith, who had limited success in his early career when he weighed up to 19 stone, but has been much more consistent since losing around 4 stone, and in 2022 he won a major title at the European Championship. He now clearly looks after himself a lot better, and he's been a top 32 player for a while now. Smith has said, "I used to be really overweight. I still am a little bit, but I do exercise really because it helps with my mentality. When I've done exercise, I get up, feel fresh, and I'm ready to attack the day. Some players will go to me, 'Core, aren't you knackered after that?' No, if anything, it wakes me up. I do it for mental health benefits. I started about 4 years ago. I turned up at Coventry and Milton Keynes. I started running around the stadium before events." So, what do I think? Well, personally, I believe that any big change on the body will have an effect on a player's throw, especially when they've been playing for maybe decades. So while weight loss can have a negative effect, so too could rapid weight gain. Obviously though, as Humphries and other players have explained, it's very important to be fit nowadays, especially with the long format games we see on TV. And away from the TV as well, some of the floor events and Eurotours have very long days. Clearly, it's ideal to be lighter as it would give you a lot more energy. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and if you enjoyed this video and learned something new, please don't forget to subscribe, as currently just 15% of my viewers are. You can also hit the bell icon if you want to get notified whenever I upload a brand new darts video, and also if you have any video ideas you want me to make in the future, please let me know in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching.